The unyielding summer sun bears down on the quiet suburban street, casting long shadows across rows of trim lawns and neat picket fences. Peace, however, is as fleeting as shade here. The crackle of a police radio tears through the humid stillness, shattering the illusion of tranquility. 3 squad cars descend like birds of prey, their lights dancing in provocative flashes of red and blue. The air grows charged, unspoken tension folding around everything in its grasp. In the center of this unfolding tableau stands a man whose calm defiance seems carved from granite. Colonel Marcus Weaver, a decorated war hero, a leader of soldiers, a man whose every breath inspires stories of courage and survival. Today, though, he wears nothing but his civilian clothes and a quiet resolve. His military accolades and the respect of his service comrades are intangible shields against what's to come. The officers step out, boots hitting asphalt with synchronized determination. It begins minor allegations, baseless demands, and a sharp, inexorable escalation. Words are exchanged, escalating not to clarity but to confrontation. Weaver, steadfast but unyielding, stands his ground. The officers, however, are stirred by an appetite for control greater than any protocol demands. Someone, a neighbor maybe, records the entire scene with shaky hands, whispering incredulously, "This is really happening." The air thickens with humidity and unease. The first officer, a stocky man with eyes hardened by enough years to know better, makes the initial move. A shove. Weaver stumbles back but recovers with an air of practiced poise, his words sharp, yet somehow calm. "Back off." "No threats, no need for escalation," he says, raising his hands in a universal gesture of submission and reason. But reason, it seems, has long since fled this confrontation. "Step back, sir!" the officer shouts, his hand twitching toward his belt. The camera pans down from a shaky angle, prompting gasps from onlookers. The second officer, younger in both age and restraint, lunges forward. It happens in a blur, Weaver's arm caught in the iron grip of one officer while another circles behind him. He struggles, not wildly but methodically, refusing to surrender his dignity even as the situation devolves into reckless chaos. The scuffle ends in a sickening blow-on punch, then 2. How easily violence festers when no one stands to stop it. Weaver hits the dirt, the relentlessness of his life as a soldier colliding with the unyielding force of American asphalt. The air carries a new weight now, thickened not merely by heat but by the creeping rot of injustice. All that remains is a faint groan, barely audible beneath the weight of silence that follows. Enter the storm. Witnesses shout, protest, plead. Calls to justice ripple through the small crowd forming at the edges of the scene. Phones are raised, and the digital eye never blinks. But justice doesn't arrive in time, not here. The officers laugh nervously, unseen by their audience, quick to reform their composed facades. Together, they shuffle Marcus's lifeless body into the dirt-streaked back seat of a squad car. The sky howls in silence as sirens finally pierce the air. Across the yard, children peer from behind curtains, faces pressed against glass, their innocent minds gaining the first bitter taste of a broken system. By the time the police report the tragic altercation, the Pentagon's ears are already burning. Weaver wasn't just any man. He was their man, one of their brightest stars. A soldier who lived not only for the battlefield, but to inspire values that stretched far beyond: respect, resilience, and loyalty. His commanding officer, General Isabel Tanner, listens in icy silence to the account relayed from her informants. Every word is a shard of betrayal. The decorum of her tightly bound braid mirrors the rigidity of her resolve. Her hand grips her phone hard enough to whiten her knuckles. "What's the next move, ma'am?" a subordinate dares to ask after a tense silence fills her vast office. The polished oak desk between them feels like a chasm dividing civilian incompetence from military precision. Her reply is low but firm, the kind of voice forged in the fires of command. "We're going to war, a different kind of war, but war nonetheless." And indeed, declarations of war come in many forms. The most immediate is a letter sent to the Department of Justice, penned with words taut as drawn wire. The Pentagon demands answers, swift and unforgiving, but it goes deeper than mere letters. A story submerged beneath the surface of headlines and Twitter hashtags begins to take shape. Strains of systemic oppression entwine stories of valor and betrayal. Motherboards hum with online fury, each byte a battle cry. Anonymous hacktivist collectives unearth bruised histories of the involved officers, exposing them to nothing less than an overwhelming public trial. And yet, the wheels of civil justice creak slowly, bogged down by bureaucracy thicker than any jungle weaver ever navigated. As dawn breaks the following day, public outrage meets the radiant glare of daybreak like a powder keg. Vigils light across the neighborhood where Weaver fell, voices murmuring songs of justice and grief into the night air. But this is no mere local affair, no flash-in-the-pan tragedy to be swept away by the tide of the next breaking news. This is national now. No corner of the country is left untouched by the shockwave. Not a single news station refrains from replaying that grainy, visceral footage. Still, no arrests are made. Then comes the Pentagon's bombshell, a directive so audacious it sends media agencies scrambling, generating a blitz of speculation and analysis that dominates every agenda. The Pentagon invokes the Uniform Code of Military Justice, a sharp pivot from reliance on civilian courts. They demand their own trial, a proceeding more surgical and precise than anything the media or politicians could conjure. Most expected a committee, a review board perhaps. This, however, redefines playing fields. The officers awaken to a world that's no longer theirs. Military police arrive at their homes under cover of darkness, executing swift and silent detainments that send waves of disbelief through local precincts. Media cameras swirl in the aftermath, capturing blurred faces, bare wrists fixed in chains more symbolic than material. Civilian jurisdictions reel as the Pentagon's sudden power grab creates an unexpected rift between their systems, spawning no shortage of controversy about boundaries and oversight. The world pauses, not in unity but in fragmented anticipation. Some cheer, fully trusting a military regime determined to hunt justice with precision and efficiency. Others grow wary, questioning if the line between accountability and authoritarianism is blurred beyond recognition. Debates spark like wildfires, talk shows roaring with urgent voices. Justice, respect, rage words take on new meanings in this strange polarized theater alive across every screen. Back in the Pentagon, Tanner prepares for the trial with a command squad drawn from a select unit of law and psychological experts, acutely aware their actions to vindicate the fallen colonel will garner equal levels of worship and condemnation. In sharp silence, she watches file after file scroll across her screen: police records, civilian reports, whispers of suppressed evidence safely unearthed in pixels under the authority of military investigation. In her gut churn two emotions: white-hot anger for her fallen colleague and burning determination to ensure that this one-time justice is fearless. And yet, even as the plans crystallize like ice beneath an Arctic sky, ghosts of doubt creep into Tanner's office. Her mentor's cautionary words echo unbidden in her mind. Grief clouds logic. Injustice cannot become a pretext for overreach. But she shakes it away, uncertain whether the words haunt her because of their wisdom or their impotence. Meanwhile, the trial schedule is set. Quickly, too quickly in some IMUTs, certain to strike sparks of electric tension throughout the nation. Every detail becomes fodder for public discussion. The backdrop of flags, the barely hidden expressions of determination etched on uniformed military advocates, the accusations whispered louder than courtroom declarations. Then, come sunset, chaos stirs once more. A phone call lands where it shouldn't, a desperate voice carrying an ominous warning. Packed with breathless urgency, it feeds a riddle and then cuts to silence. The consequences are bigger than you think. Some truths don't survive daylight, be careful. And so the night stretches its trembling fingers over proceedings not yet born, whispering promises of conflict still to seize opportunities hidden in shadows, provoking fears some players may have already crossed far too many lines. Recap: a public display of injustice sets the stage for clashing forces, where grief turns into national discourse. As the Pentagon seizes jurisdiction, echoes of doubt creep into plans for a trial that could reshape national perspectives on justice forever. The morning sun scrapes its golden claws across Washington, D.C., illuminating a city poised on a razor's edge. The Pentagon hums with tension, corridors bristling with energy as operatives dart from room to room under General Isabel Tanner's watchful gaze. Today marks the inauguration of an extraordinary tribunal, a proceeding that promises to transcend the mundanity of justice and cut straight into America's pulsing heart. 10 minutes, General, a crisp voice interrupts from the doorway of her office. Tanner doesn't flinch, her eyes locked onto her reflection in the darkened screen of her war room tablet. Her sharply tailored uniform is immaculate, each crease a testament to her calculated control. But beyond the pristine facade, her insides coil with a growing sense of unease. Every decision she's made thus far has carved out a path, brittle yet unrelenting, leading to this moment, and that path, she knows, is strewn with landmines. "Understood," she finally replies, her voice clipped but steady. Rising from her chair, she places the tablet under one arm and strides past the soldier. Her footsteps echo curtly as she enters the operations nerve center, where a small army of analysts and legal experts await her arrival. The array of monitors perched overhead paint a fragmented mosaic of public outrage and speculation. News tickers flash bold declarations. Pentagon takes lead in racism scandal. Tanner's steel-blue gaze sweeps the room, finding her key staff clustered around Major James Renera, thick-necked man with an unbreakable jaw and an unwavering allegiance that Tanner treasures more than she admits. "How bad is it?" Tanner asks matter-of-factly as she approaches, cutting Renner's briefing short. He pivots, expression grave. "Worse, the media is treating this like the circus of the century. Everything rides on today." "Then let's make sure it's a show worth watching. We give them proof, not pageantry." Her voice is a whip crack, sending a ripple of tension through the air. No one challenges her. As the clock barrels toward the trial's opening session, the military complex shifts into well-drilled precision. Inside the specially appointed courtroom, a remarkable fusion of military efficiency and legal gravitas cameras are strictly prohibited. The officers turned defendants, pale and stone-faced, occupy the bench under armed guard. Across the aisle, a contingent of military prosecutors assembles with meticulous readiness, their polished boots gleaming like obsidian beneath the fluorescent lights. The roar of public discourse outside, however, is anything but silent. Crowds have gathered beyond the Pentagon's fortified gates, their chants scraping the morning sky. Signs brandished with phrases like "Justice for Weaver" dance in a sea of indignation interspersed with skepticism and distrust. Tensions ripple outward in concentric waves. Onlookers train their phones on the spectacle, while barricades buckle slightly under the sheer weight of public presence. Above it all, the low churn of helicopter blades punctuates the volatile atmosphere. Far removed from the exterior cacophony, Tanner stands with her elite legal team in the courtroom's war room, reviewing a plethora of evidence. One table is piled high with declassified witness statements, audio transcripts, and meticulously sourced records exposing patterns of misconduct within the officer's precinct. Another screen projects the body cam footage from that fateful day, a piece of evidence chilling in its rawness. "It won't be enough," mutters Captain Eliza Cordova, a gaunt woman with piercing eyes and a reputation as a legal shark. "The defense will twist every second of this and argue Weaver escalated it. Or worse, that their actions were justified by some phantom threat. That's because their arguments hinge on one principle: control," Tanner replies without missing a beat. "And it's time we show them they never had any to begin with." Her words might carry a definitive weight, but even Tanner knows shadows lurk just beyond her tactical line of sight. Already, whispers of sabotage pepper the ranks of Pentagon whistleblower leaking documents, coordinated smear campaigns against her team, bribes exchanged in darkened alleys. Nothing has crippled operations yet, but the fissures are there, and she can feel them widening. As proceedings begin, Major Renner takes front and center, delivering opening remarks sharper than a predator's teeth. "This case," he begins, scanning the room with an almost predatory calm, "is not merely about individual actions. It's about a system of rot that festers when men sworn to uphold justice decide they are above it." His voice rises ever so slightly, punctuating his stance with calculated pauses. On the other side, the defendants sit stoically, their faces masks of forced indifference. Their lead attorney, an unassuming man with a sallow complexion and an encyclopedic knowledge of loopholes, leans over to whisper in his client's ear. Whatever he says draws the faintest curl of a smirk across the officer's lips, the kind of smirk that sets Tanner's teeth on edge. As testimonies roll out, the courtroom is enveloped in the gravity of Weaver's legacy. His military colleagues speak of his unwavering moral compass, citing moments when he risked his life to save soldiers under his command. Childhood friends recount a younger Marcus who dreamed not of medals, but of building a community free from fear or prejudice. And yet, around every corner, the defense picks at threads, twisting narratives into something frayed and less noble. He was agitated, one officer claims, recounting the altercation. He pushed back against our instructions. We were concerned he posed a risk to public safety. It's a statement that draws scattered murmurs from the courtroom, particularly from burned-out journalists scribbling shorthand missives to be sent to editors hungry for drama. Risk to public safety? Against 3 armed officers? Cordova counters sharply when cross-examining. Her tone is surgical, exposing logical fissures in the defense's argument. The energy in the courtroom ebbs and flows as conflicting accounts are dissected. Yet despite the precision of the military's offense, Tanner's certainty falters when the day ends with a disquieting revelation. As prosecutors prepare their next evidentiary set, the damning personal records of the accused officers, a sudden technical glitch stalls proceedings. Servers unexpectedly go offline, key files rendered inaccessible. Engineers scramble as speculation fills the room like noxious smoke. Tanner's jaw tightens as her gaze locks onto Cordova's. This isn't a coincidence. Forgetfulness doesn't infiltrate military operations, but sabotage does. A tension-filled recess is called, facilitating a rare moment for Tanner's team to rally in private. "We're under attack from the inside," Tanner announces flatly, pacing circles in the cramped conference room adjacent to the courtroom. "A mole?" Renner questions, though his tone suggests this is less a question and more a grim assumption. "Possibly," Tanner admits, her marine blue eyes sharpening into something predatory. "But moles only succeed because they think their prey is deaf, dumb, and blind. We aren't." She pivots. "Eliza, prioritize contingency evidence physical stuff. Renner, get the IT team answering for this glitch and tell them I want results by sunset." By the time evening rolls around, the tides seem to shift once more. A meticulous recovery of critical data has spared the military prosecution team from their plummet into disarray. And yet, Tanner's gut churns with unease as she steps back into the courtroom, the air metallic and laden with consequence. Something's wrong, she feels it. Her instincts, honed from decades commanding troops in hostile terrain, buzz like static electricity along the back of her neck. And then it happens. As silence falls amid proceedings, the sudden echo of a commotion erupts outside, not in the public domain of peaceful protesters confined to barricades, but within the depths of the Pentagon itself. An alarm blares briefly, a jagged sound swiftly cut off. Tanner stiffens, rising to attention as a young aide darts into the courtroom with panic lining her face. "Ma'am," the woman stammers, her expression a cocktail of urgency and fear. "There's been an unauthorized breach, restricted access files, classified records. Someone got in." The room freezes, Tanner's expression hardening into something unreadable, something dangerous. "How bad is the damage?" Her question cuts through the gathering fog of panic. "There's more. The breach wasn't just technical. Someone's infiltrated the chain of command feeding intel to outside sources. It's political espionage at best, sabotage at worst." And there lies the cliffhanger, stretching like a taut wire ready to snap under pressure. The trial, the integrity of justice, the nation's nerve, they all dangle precariously on what happens next. Amid the simmering chaos, one thing becomes clear. The enemy no longer hides solely in plain sight. They nest within, waiting to strike when the stakes are highest. Recap. The monumental trial begins, set against a groundswell of public outrage. Yet, just as momentum builds, Tanner uncovers evidence of coordinated sabotage within the chain of command, threatening the trial and justice itself. The courtroom teeters on the edge of chaos as the young aide's words settle in. There is no time for dramatics, no chance for exaggerated reaction. General Isabel Tanner moves swiftly. Her steely eyes scan the room, finding her trusted lieutenants among the crowd of anxious faces. The gravity of the situation is clear. This is not just about justice for Colonel Marcus Weaver. This is about a much larger battle now spilling out of control. To those outside the courtroom, the Pentagon might appear impenetrable, a fortress of order and control. Yet to Tanner and her team, it feels like a fortress under siege, crumbling from within. She leans toward Major Renner, her voice low and sharp, almost drowned out by the ambient buzz of tension. "Lock it down," she orders, her tone carrying the weight of unchallenged authority. "No one moves, no one breathes without my say-so. And get me everything, every report, every whisper about this breach. I want to know who, what, and why before the day is done." Renner nods briskly and bolts out of the room, his posture rigid with purpose. Tanner, meanwhile, forces her expression into one of calculated composure. There can be no appearance of chaos, not here, not now. The courtroom cannot know what is unraveling deeper within the Pentagon's walls. The murmurs have spread, though, like ripples in a pond. The accused officers shift uneasily in their seats, their lawyer glancing around with a thinly concealed smirk that Tanner hates to see. It speaks of triumph, of some small victory snatched in the chaos. She fixes him with a glare that could freeze fire, but her internal alarm bells are ringing louder now. Captain Eliza Cordova, Tanner's lead prosecutor, strides toward her, tablet in hand, brow furrowed. "We've got a problem," she says curtly, her voice devoid of the usual snark Tanner has come to rely on. "The files we recovered, some of them are corrupted. Key pieces of evidence are missing or altered. It's selective. Someone knew exactly what to target." For a moment, there is silence between them, a silence heavy with unspoken implications. Then Tanner straightens, her determination like iron. "We aren't folding," Tanner states firmly, the words more a command to herself than to Cordova. "We adapt. Use the backup evidence we verified. Get the witnesses prepped to fill in the gaps. They think they can cripple this case with sabotage? They don't know who they're dealing with." Cordova nods, but a flicker of doubt remains in her sharp eyes. Tanner notices, but she lets it go. There's no time for reassurance. Back in the courtroom, proceedings resume. Major Renner re-enters quietly, slipping Tanner a folded note as he passes. She opens it discreetly, her expression unreadable as her eyes scan the hastily scrawled message. "Breaches confirmed. Internal access used. Targets include case files and witness security logs. Saboteur still unidentified. Investigations active." She folds the note away, her face a mask of professionalism. This trial has become more than a legal battle. It's now a high-stakes war against forces unseen and unpredictable. The next witness is Coletta Civilian, who had lived 2 doors down from Marcus Weaver. A middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a voice that cracks slightly under the weight of her words, she recounts what she saw that day, the confrontation, the violence. Her testimony is raw, unpolished, but powerful in its authenticity. The defense lawyer pounces during cross-examination, his tone condescending as he questions the witness's ability to perceive and recall events accurately. "Isn't it possible," he asks, leaning heavily on the podium, "that your emotions clouded your view of what really happened? That, in your understandable shock, you misinterpreted the severity of the officer's actions?" The woman straightens in her seat, her voice steady despite the quiver in her hands. "No," she says simply, "I know what I saw. I saw a man trying to stay calm while 3 officers escalated without reason. I saw him react when they crossed the line, but never once did he attack them. And I saw them beat him down like he was nothing." Her voice breaks on the last word, but her resolve remains intact. Tanner can feel the atmosphere shift, the weight of those words settling over the courtroom. But the defense lawyer smirks again, his question shifting to undermine the credibility of her testimony. And so the dance continues. Attack and counterattack, the truth constantly muddied by the artifice of legal sparring. As testimonies proceed, Tanner monitors every detail, every shift in tone, every reaction from the jurors in their rigid military posture. But even as they gain ground with their witnesses, the sense of unease grows. She knows the saboteur is still out there, likely watching, waiting for their next moment of attack. When the courtroom breaks for recess after hours of heated exchanges, Tanner gathers her key team in a secured room. The tension is palpable, the air thick with frustration and the faint tang of sweat. "We're being hunted," she states bluntly, her voice cutting through the low murmur of worried discussions. "Whoever is behind this, they're organized, deliberate, and inside our chain of command. We can't afford to lose control, not for a second. Renner, what's our progress on identifying the source of the breach?" Renner shakes his head, his frustration evident. "Nothing concrete yet. Whoever they are, they're good. Every lead we follow gets cut off just as we close in. Then we focus on containment," Tanner replies. "Cordova, double-check every piece of evidence we plan to use tomorrow. Triple-check it. If necessary, we'll rely on live witness accounts and physical records over digital files. They can sabotage data, but they can't erase what people saw, what they felt." Cordova nods, already scrolling through her notes on the tablet. "What about security for the witnesses? If they have access to logs, increased protection, around the clock," Tanner interrupts. "Nobody moves without an armed escort. And I want every communication monitored. If someone so much as breathes near our witnesses, I want to know about it." The team disperses with a renewed sense of purpose, but Tanner remains seated, her eyes fixed on the folder in front of her. Each piece of paper holds a fragment of the truth, a truth she is determined to deliver, no matter how many obstacles are thrown in her path. As night falls, the Pentagon remains a hive of activity, lights burning bright in the windows as soldiers and staff work tirelessly to secure the trial and its proceedings. But Tanner knows the darkness outside is not their greatest threat. It's the darkness within, the betrayal lurking unseen. In her office, Tanner reviews the day's events, her mind racing through strategies and contingencies. A soft knock at the door pulls her from her thoughts. It's Major Renner, his expression more grim than usual. "General," he begins hesitantly, "we've received a tip. Anonymous, of course. They claim to have information on the breach, but won't reveal it unless they speak with you directly." Tanner's eyebrows rise slightly, her curiosity piqued despite her better judgment. "And where exactly are they?" "They want to meet off-site," Renner replies, his tone weighted with caution. "It's risky. Could be a trap." Tanner considers this for a moment before standing, her presence as commanding as ever. "Prepare a team," she orders. "If this is a trap, we'll spring it on them instead. And if it's not—" She trails off, her eyes narrowing with determination. "If it's not, this could be the break we need." The evening air is cool as Tanner and her selected team move toward the designated meeting point, a nondescript parking garage on the edge of the city. Shadows stretch long and dark, and every sound seems amplified in the stillness. The informant waits near the center of the garage, their face obscured by a hood. Tanner approaches cautiously, flanked by armed guards. The figure doesn't flinch as she stops a few feet away, her stance strong and unyielding. "You wanted to speak with me," Tanner begins, her voice calm but authoritative. "Start talking." The figure lifts their head slightly, revealing a young woman with sharp features and weary eyes. "You're being targeted," she says simply, her voice low but urgent. "Not just you, but the entire trial. They want it to fail, and they're willing to do whatever it takes." "Who are they?" Tanner demands, her patience thinning. "Names, organizations? I need specifics." The woman hesitates, glancing around as if expecting an ambush. "I don't know exactly," she admits, frustration evident in her tone, "but they have resources, connections high up, and they've already made their next move." Before Tanner can press for more, the sound of tires screeching echoes through the garage. Lights flood the gloomy space as unmarked vehicles swarm the area. The informant's eyes widen in fear, and Tanner's team immediately moves to form a protective circle around her. "Get her out of here," Tanner orders, her voice cutting through the chaos, "and find out who orchestrated this." She stands firm as her team springs into action, her mind already racing ahead, piecing together the puzzle of this escalating conflict. As the vehicles close in, one thing becomes clear. The battle for justice has just entered a new, far more dangerous phase. Recap. As the trial progresses under mounting pressure, sabotage threatens to derail the case. Tanner's investigation into the source of the breach leads her to an informant, only for an ambush to throw the situation into chaos. The clamor of boots on polished floors echoes through the Pentagon's stark hallways, blending with the muted hum of overhead lights. Every step feels heavier, every breath tighter, and every sound sharper. Shadows stretch long and lean across the walls as General Isabel Tanner strides with urgent purpose toward the subterranean operations center, a secured nerve point where answers, she hopes, will begin to emerge. Behind her, Major Renner keeps pace, his brow furrowed and his knuckles white as he grips a manila folder filled with hastily printed reports. "General, the breach was surgical," he begins, his voice a low rumble. "Whoever's doing this, they're inside the system or damn near close to it. Look at the timestamps. They hit only what they had to. Logs, case files, even resource allocations for witness security." He hesitates, his normally unshakable confidence flickering. "It's coordinated. Too coordinated." Tanner doesn't stop, her jaw a rigid line of frustration. "Then we coordinate better," she snaps, her voice echoing against the steel walls. "We have redundancies for a reason, Major. Tell it to rebuild what they can, and put tactical teams on 24-hour rotations. No leak, no mole, no sabotage leaves this building alive." Renner nods, shifting the file under his arm. "Yes, ma'am." The pair finally enters the brightly lit operations center, a labyrinth of consoles manned by military analysts and technical staff. The air crackles with tension, the unmistakable scent of burnt coffee mingling with the metallic sharpness of recycled air. On a central screen, a map of the Pentagon glows ominously, red icons glaring like firelight overlaid on its image. Symbols representing compromised systems pulse and flicker, each one a dagger in critical infrastructure. "Update," Tanner barks, her commanding presence silencing small conversations in the room. Lieutenant Grace Simmons, a young intelligence officer with sharp eyes and a sleepless demeanor, steps forward, tablet in hand. "We've traced the point of entry back to a server cluster assigned to civilian contract files," she explains quickly, her words clipped and precise. "It shouldn't have allowed classified access, but some permissions were manipulated. Whoever did this bypassed 5 layers of security protocols in under a minute." Tanner's eyes narrow, her mind instantly cycling through the possibilities. Outside contractors alone can't pull this off, not without help on the inside. Simmons hesitates, exchanging a glance with Renner. "We believe the breach originated from the civilian side," she admits, "but there's evidence suggesting additional tampering from a higher access tier. It's possible likely that a trusted contact was either bribed, coerced, or turned." The room feels momentarily colder, tension tightening its grip around Tanner's chest. "Coerced?" she repeats, her tone heavy. "Or compromised, Lieutenant? Could this be someone from our side?" "We don't have confirmation," Simmons says carefully. Tanner exhales sharply, pacing like a predator confined to a cage. Her boots strike the floor like a drumbeat. "Then confirm it," she orders. "Which files are considered completely unrecoverable?" Simmons scrolls through her tablet, the glow illuminating the doubt flickering in her eyes. "Some of the most substantial evidence against the officers," she answers. "Specifically, administrative corruption files, witness protection details, and surveillance footage archives. Most copies have been erased or corrupted beyond recognition." Tanner stops mid-step and rubs her temple. "Show me the remains of the footage," she says, motioning for Simmons to display it. The central screen suddenly shifts, revealing a grainy, disjointed video feed salvaged from tampered cameras. In it, Colonel Marcus Weaver is clearly identifiable, his body language tense but composed as he engages with his assailants. The footage glitches sporadically, cutting out at critical moments, including the exact sequence in which the first blow is struck. A weight presses against Tanner's chest as silence reclaims the room. "They're trying to rewrite history," Tanner mutters under her breath before turning to her staff, her voice cooling to an icy fury. "Unacceptable. Whatever footage remains, patch it together however necessary. Use digital forensics, visual enhancement, I don't care. But I want every piece of verifiable imagery restored." "Understood, General," Simmons replies, already keyed into the task at hand. Tanner moves to a corner of the room where Renner lingers, his expression pensive. "What aren't you saying?" she demands, picking up on the ripple of doubt in his demeanor. He pulls a classified dossier and places it on the desk between them. "We've identified chatter across several encrypted channels, whistleblower forums, dark web communication nodes. Someone's selling intel about the case, including your next moves. It's vague but damning. The leak isn't just dangerous, it's precise." Tanner's gaze sharpens, latching onto every word. "And the source?" Renner hesitates, his tone deliberate. "We're narrowing it down to 2 suspects within our ranks." Her expression hardens, the faintest flicker of betrayal flashing behind her impassive mask before it's swallowed by resolve. "Handle it quietly. No accusations until we have irrefutable proof. Losing control of the narrative now is not an option, understood?" Renner nods and steps away to brief his team as Tanner takes a deeper breath. Her entire career feels balanced on a knife's edge, and the weight of it is becoming suffocating. Justice for Marcus Weaver isn't just her duty, it's personal, a visceral commitment to a man who embodied what leadership and honor truly meant. Meanwhile, back at the courtroom, Captain Cordova finishes recalibrating preparations for the upcoming testimony. The witnesses are being escorted under high protection, their safety now more precarious than ever. As Cordova reviews her final notes, she snaps a pen between her fingers out of habit, her mind razor-sharp but troubled. The first witness of the afternoon, a former Special Operations Sergeant who served with Colonel Weaver during their most dangerous deployment, is ushered to the stand. His uniform is impeccably kept, medals gleaming under the courtroom lights as he recounts their shared history. "Colonel Weaver," he says, voice steady but laced with emotion, "was more than a leader, more than a soldier. He was a protector. Every decision he made was calculated to shield others, even at risk to himself. And that didn't start on the battlefield, It followed him everywhere, even into the line of fire that was his own home. Tension ripples across the courtroom. The defense attempts an objection, but it is swiftly overruled. When the prosecutor presses further, asking how the colonel dealt with injustice back in the service, the witness answers simply, "He confronted it head-on, always. Fearless if it meant standing alone." Outside the courtroom, however, events spiral further. One of the witnesses scheduled to appear next suddenly fails surveillance contact. Their military escort reports unusual delays during transport, a diverted route, and then complete silence. The activation of emergency signals sends military police scrambling, but it becomes clear someone or something has intercepted key personnel. The gap widens. Tanner's phone buzzes at that precise moment, an encrypted call that she picks up swiftly. "Report," she commands. "General, we've lost contact with witness Cole." An officer on the line informs her. "Transport details are scrambled. Permission to escalate security protocol?" Tanner's breath hitches fractionally before she answers. "Permission granted. Initiate emergency GPS pings on all mobile assets. I want immediate updates every 30 seconds." She can practically feel the walls closing in, the hands of unseen enemies tightening their grip. General Isabel Tanner has faced enemies wielding weapons, armies, chaos itself. But this is an insidious threat, hiding in the seams of systems she swore to protect. The breach expands, not only threatening the trial, but every principle of justice it aches to uphold. With the courtroom in precarious full swing, Tanner steels herself for what feels like a siege torrent poised to unravel everything they've fought to preserve. Recap: unexpected sabotage jeopardizes the trial as critical evidence is erased, a key witness disappears under mysterious circumstances, and trust fractures within military ranks. Tanner faces mounting pressure as the lines between law, corruption, and warfare blur. The Pentagon looms in solemn silence as the night stretches its fingers into the dimly lit hallways, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within. General Isabel Tanner steps into a secured briefing room, the walls lined with encrypted communication consoles. The air crackles with quiet tension as her top advisors and security personnel gather around the long metal table. The failure to locate witness Cole hangs heavy over the room, an ominous shadow that threatens to unravel everything they fought to hold together. The urgency presses on her, demanding action precise, unwavering, and immediate. She takes her place at the head of the table, her expression carved from steel. Every eye in the room turns to her as she begins, her voice low and deliberate. "We've confirmed sabotage, leaks, and now the disappearance of Cole. This is no longer limited to courtroom theatrics." Each word slices through the air like a sharpened blade. "We are at war, and somebody inside this system is feeding the enemy." Major Renner, seated to Tanner's left, sets down a folder filled with the latest intelligence reports. He leans forward, his brows knit together in frustration. "Ma'am, unearthing the mole won't be easy. Whoever they are, they've erased most of their tracks. And now this Cole is missing, likely orchestrated to destabilize our case. We've scrambled teams to follow cold leads, but the longer this goes on..." "They win," Tanner finishes for him, her tone clipped. Her gaze sweeps the room as she delivers her next command. "We don't have time to chase ghosts. Prioritize actionable intelligence." "Simmons," she calls, addressing the tech specialist seated toward the back, "I need real-time monitoring on all secure communications. Expand the scope, military, civilian, hell, even third-party contractors if it comes to that." Simmons looks up, her fingers hovering over the holographic keyboard. "General, that might set off alarms among uninvolved parties. Expanding scope could compromise the integrity of..." "Do it anyway," Tanner interrupts, firm, resolute. "We're past the point of playing safe." As Simmons obeys the order, the room buzzes with muted activity. Screens glow with a furious intensity, data streaming across in chaotic bursts. Tanner's mind pieces together the fragments, weaving a strategy in real time. She knows the stakes have shifted. This isn't just about Marcus Weaver's case anymore. This is about preserving trust in an already fragile system. Hours pass and the pressure only mounts as critical leads dry up. Then, a break. Renner bursts into the room, a sheet of paper in his hand, lines of urgency etched across his face. "General, we've pinpointed the last known location of Cole's transport," he says, handing her the details. "It was diverted 10 miles north of the intended route. Surveillance drones confirm an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city as the likely point of convergence." Tanner rises, her mind racing ahead of the possibilities. "Deploy a recovery unit immediately," she orders. "I want Cole retrieved, alive and safe. This might be our only chance to salvage the trial." Renner hesitates, his hand lingering on the back of the chair. "Ma'am, if I may, there's a high chance this is a trap given the circumstances. They want us spread thin, chasing our tails." She meets his gaze steadily. "You're right," she agrees. "It's a trap, but it's also our only lead. Send the unit, but keep a rapid response team on standby. If this goes south, we're hitting back immediately." Renner acknowledges with a brief nod before exiting to execute the plan. As the minutes crawl by, Tanner finds herself pacing the room, her thoughts tangled in scenarios that play out with grim inevitability. Every instinct warns her the enemy is 2 steps ahead, yet retreat is not an option, not with so much at stake. Inside the courtroom the next morning, the atmosphere feels electrified, the weight of the previous day's disruptions hanging over every participant. The jury sits rigid in their seats, their faces blank masks of professionalism, while the accused officers exchange glances with their lawyer, a man who has built a reputation for exploiting procedural cracks to exonerate his clients. Captain Cordova takes her place at the prosecution's table, visibly tense but composed. She knows the hardest part of her day lies ahead. With Cole missing, her strategy requires a dangerous pivot, one that risks opening weaknesses for the defense to exploit. Her first move of the day is to recall an earlier witness for follow-up testimony, a decision likely to stir controversy. The defense objects immediately, their lawyer rising to claim procedural unfairness, but the judge allows it after a brief deliberation. As the witness returns to the stand, Cordova's questioning grows sharper, exposing gaps and connections the defense had previously glossed over. Every move is calculated, designed not to kill, but to bleed the opposing case slowly, methodically. And yet, cracks begin to show. The defense's lawyer gains ground with well-timed objections, turning the tide of the narrative just as Cordova appears to secure momentum. It's clear he's playing for time, his demeanor calm, almost as if he expects something to derail the prosecution entirely. Then it happens. An aide enters the courtroom and approaches Tanner, whispering something into her ear that causes her features to harden instantly. Without a word, she rises and follows the aide out of the room, leaving Cordova to fend for herself under mounting pressure. The sudden absence does not go unnoticed. The defense lawyer seizes the opportunity to sow doubts about prosecutorial cohesion in front of the jury. Back in the Pentagon, Tanner arrives at a secure comm center where Renner is already waiting. His expression confirms her worst suspicions. "The recovery unit encountered heavy resistance," he begins, his voice tight. "4 injuries, 2 critical. Cole is missing, no sign of the witness at the warehouse." Tanner exhales sharply, her shoulders stiffening against a surge of frustration. "And the attackers?" "Gone by the time reinforcements arrived," Renner replies. "But we recovered equipment enough to suggest private contractors were involved, mercenaries likely." For a moment, silence stretches between them as Tanner processes the implications. Private contractors mean money, connections, resources. Whoever orchestrated this attack isn't just operating on revenge or ideology. They're playing a much larger game. "Renner," she says finally, her tone carrying the edge of a blade, "initiate an intelligence cross-check on every private security firm contracted in the last 8 months within 100 miles of DC. I want to know who hired them, who funds them, and who they answer to." "Yes, ma'am," he replies without hesitation, already moving to execute her orders. Tanner watches him go before turning her attention to the live feed of the courtroom still playing on a nearby monitor. Cordova is holding her ground admirably, but the strain is evident. Tanner knows she has to return soon, to show strength even as the walls close in around them. This case isn't just about justice for Marcus Weaver anymore. It's about proving the system itself isn't irreparably broken. And yet doubt gnaws at the edges of her resolve. For all her planning, her maneuvers, her contingencies, she can't shake the sense that she's being outmaneuvered, that this battle is slipping beyond her control. The enemy, whoever they are, remains invisible, their motives as elusive as their identities. By the time she re-enters the courtroom, the tension is palpable. All eyes turn to her, some expectant, others accusatory. She takes her seat with an air of unshakable authority, but inside, the weight of the missing witness, the ongoing sabotage, and the relentless scrutiny presses down on her like a 1,000-pound burden. Hours later, as the day's proceedings draw to a close, Tanner returns to her office. The room is dark except for the faint glow of her desk lamp illuminating a mountain of files and reports. She sits down heavily, the silence almost deafening, and opens a folder containing the latest intercepted messages from the suspected mole. One phrase stands out, repeated across multiple communications. "You can't save them." For the first time in decades, a sliver of doubt pierces Tanner's fortress-like composure. Is this war winnable, or is it already lost, the enemy so deeply entrenched that no amount of strategy can root them out? As she closes the folder and leans back in her chair, the sharp chime of her desk phone breaks the stillness. She answers immediately, her voice brisk. "Tanner?" The voice on the other end is calm but unfamiliar. "General Tanner, you don't know me, but I know you, and if you want to win this, you'll need to meet me, alone." "Who is this?" she demands, already motioning for Renner to trace the call. The voice continues undeterred. "Someone who knows what you're up against. Someone who can tell you where the next attack will hit. I'll send the location, 15 minutes, bring no one." Before she can respond, the line goes dead. The room plunges into silence once more, but the battle drums continue to echo in Tanner's mind. Alone in the dim light, she contemplates the risks, the unknowns, and the overwhelming odds stacked against her. But one thing remains certain. She will not back down. Not tonight. Not ever. Recap. Tanner's team fails to recover the missing witness, revealing ties to private contractors in the growing conspiracy. A mysterious phone call offers critical information, escalating the tension and forcing Tanner to consider a path fraught with danger. The concrete walls of the Pentagon feel as though they're closing in on General Isabel Tanner. The echo of her boots against the cold floors reverberates louder in her head as she strides toward her operations center. The words from the mysterious phone call cling to her like the smell of smoke after a battle. 15 minutes, come alone. She knows better than to trust it. Every fiber of her disciplined mind screams that this could be a trap, yet she also knows she's running out of options. The courtroom, the sabotaged files, the missing witness, every move she's made has been countered, her efforts undermined from within. Even her meticulous planning is beginning to feel like an unraveling tapestry, its threads pulled loose by unseen hands. Tanner pauses outside the briefing room. Major Renner is inside, likely finalizing the next stage of their mounting strategy to salvage the trial. Her fingers brush the handle of the door, a moment's hesitation escaping her otherwise unyielding demeanor. "General Tanner does not hesitate," she murmurs, a mantra from years of battlefield command. With that, she composes herself and steps inside. The room is alive with anticipation. Holographic displays illuminate the faces of her staff, casting them in sharp relief. Renner stands at the head of the table, gesturing to an aerial map, probably the last known location of witness Cole's vehicle. His voice carries over the low hum of background noise. "The diversion was deliberate," Renner is saying. "Every step was calculated to mislead and delay our response. Whoever they are, they've had eyes on us for far longer than we've realized." "Which means we're not just reacting anymore," Tanner interjects, making her presence known. The entire room straightens as her commanding tone cuts through the air. "We are going to take control. Renner, I want the names of every contractor who had clearance in the last 2 years vetted again. If we missed something, find it. Simmons, tighten the communication protocols across every department. If there's a leak, I want it suffocated before it spreads." "Yes, ma'am," Simmons replies without looking up from her terminal, her fingers flying over the keyboard like a pianist mid-rhapsody. Renner hesitates, studying Tanner. "Are you going to tell me what's really on your mind, General?" Tanner stares at him for a long moment, considering how much to disclose. He's loyal, but every word, every decision feels like a potential slip now. She opts for a carefully constructed half-truth. "I've received intel," she says calmly, "a lead on where the next disruption to this trial may occur. It's speculative, but credible enough to investigate personally." Renner frowns. "Personally? Ma'am, if there's even a chance this is connected to the attacks, I can't recommend—" "No." Tanner's tone leaves no room for argument. "I trust my instincts, and they've gotten us this far. You have your orders, Major. Maintain the trial's integrity in my absence and coordinate with Cordova on any emergent developments. I will keep you apprised the moment I have anything actionable." Before Renner can object further, Tanner steps away, her spine straight and her shoulders squared. Inside, however, her instincts churn with unease. She's walking a tightrope without a net. The streets of DC blur into a mix of shadows and neon as Tanner drives herself to the designated meeting point. It's a small act of control, handling the wheel herself. With each turn, her mind sharpens its edge, readying for the unknown. The address sent moments after the call leads her to a disused parking garage near the edge of the city. It's the kind of place where forgotten things linger, where echoes have no one to answer them. Tanner exits her vehicle, her sidearm discreetly holstered under her tailored jacket. The air is damp and cool, carrying the oil-soaked tang of urban decay. Her boots make measured, deliberate steps as she scans the area. Empty levels cascade above her, their cement columns like the skeletons of a forgotten labyrinth. A flicker of movement draws her attention. From the shadows steps a figure, the hood of their jacket masking their face. Tanner stops short, her hand instinctively brushing the edge of her weapon. She doesn't draw not yet. "You're alone," the figure notes. Their voice is feminine young but hardened by experience. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." Tanner keeps her posture neutral, but every nerve in her body is primed, ready to spring into action. "Start talking. Who are you, and why should I trust anything you say?" The figure hesitates, then pulls back her hood. A young woman stares back at Tanner, no older than 30. Her face is sharp, her eyes wary. "My name doesn't matter," she says, shoving her trembling hands into her pockets. "What matters is that you're being played. Harder than you realize." "By who?" Tanner's words are like stone, immovable. "Your own people," the woman replies, her voice trembling. "Not all of them, but enough to cripple you. I worked for a private contractor, hired to monitor certain communications within your ranks." Tanner narrows her eyes. "A contractor infiltrating military operations? Bold claim. Evidence?" The woman pulls out a flash drive, holding it up like an offering. "It's all on here. Names, codes, payment trails. You think this is about Marcus Weaver? Sure, that was the spark, but what you're really up against? It's about power. About discrediting the military, the court, everything." Suspicion flares in Tanner's chest. Her instincts scream trap, but something in the woman's eyes raw and desperate stays her hand. Before Tanner can respond, the distant screech of tires echoes through the garage. Both women freeze, their eyes locking. "You were followed," the informant hisses, her voice laced with panic. "No," Tanner answers darkly. "We both were." The next moments unfold in chaos. Vehicles flood the garage, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Doors slam open and armed men spill out, their movements sharp and rehearsed. Mercenary-strained professionals, not random thugs. Tanner reacts instantly, shoving the informant behind one of the concrete columns. "Stay low, stay quiet," she orders, her voice as calm as it is commanding. The first shot ricochets against the stone pillar, a sharp reminder of the danger closing in. Tanner draws her sidearm, her military training kicking in as she assesses the situation. 3 shooters visible, likely more out of sight. Their tactics are careful, measured. Whoever sent them doesn't want her dead. Not yet. "General Tanner!" one of the mercenaries calls out, his voice amplified by a portable speaker. "No need to make this messy. Hand over the girl and walk away." Tanner smirks grimly, her grip tightening on her weapon. "You don't know me very well," she mutters under her breath. She moves swiftly, her boots barely making a sound as she flanks one of the shooters. Her first shot finds its mark, the man crumpling silently to the ground. The other mercenaries react, their formation shifting, but Tanner capitalizes on the opening. The informant remains hidden, her breathing rapid but controlled. For every advance the mercenaries make, Tanner counters with precision. Her movements are fluid, purposeful. Even as adrenaline courses through her veins, her mind remains clear. This isn't just about survival. It's about sending a message. The firefight drags on, the echoes of gunfire mingling with the grind of tires as reinforcements arrive. Tanner's reinforcements. A rapid response team bursts onto the scene, their weapons trained and their movements synchronized. The mercenaries falter under the combined assault, retreating with calculated precision. Within minutes, the garage falls silent once more, the air thick with the scent of cordite and tension. Tanner lowers her weapon but doesn't holster it. Her eyes scan the scene, ensuring no threats remain. The informant emerges cautiously, her face pale but steady. "You didn't have to." "Save it," Tanner cuts her off. "You're coming with me. If what you claim is true, you've just become the most valuable and vulnerable asset in this fight." Back at the Pentagon, Tanner's team works at a breakneck pace to process the information on the flash drive. Simmons coordinates the decryption efforts, her fingers flying over the keyboard as lines of code spill across the screen. Renner stands nearby, his arms crossed and his expression grim. "Whatever's on there, it better be worth it," Renner mutters. "This case is hanging by a thread, General, and I intend to weave it back together," Tanner replies, her tone unyielding. "Have we secured Cole's last known location yet?" "Still nothing," Renner admits, frustration evident in his voice. "But the private contractor angle might give us something to work with." As the minutes tick by, the contents of the flash drive begin to emerge, a web of corruption and conspiracy that makes Tanner's blood run cold. Payment trails linking the mercenaries to a shadowy shell corporation. Encrypted communications coordinating attacks on key witnesses. And worst of all, the names of individuals within the military who've been compromised. Tanner's eyes narrow as she reads the list. Some names she recognizes, others she doesn't. But one thing becomes clear. The enemy isn't just at the gates, they're inside them. "We're running out of time," she says, her voice low but charged with determination. "If we can't secure Cole and the trial collapses, this conspiracy won't just win. It'll become unstoppable." Renner steps forward, his jaw set. "What's the plan, General?" Tanner stands straighter, her resolve hardening. "We go on the offensive. No more playing defense, no more reacting. This ends now." As her team springs into action, Tanner can't shake the thought that the worst is still to come. The battle is far from over, and the next move will determine not just the trial's outcome, but the fate of everything she's sworn to protect. Recap. Tanner meets a whistleblower who exposes a deeper conspiracy within the military, only for an ambush to derail their meeting. After narrowly escaping, Tanner gains critical evidence, but faces mounting pressure as the trial teeters on the edge of collapse. The air in the Pentagon tightens as another sleepless day gives way to another sleepless night. The weight of the conspiracy presses heavier with every moment. General Isabel Tanner stands motionless in her office, fingers twitching over the edge of her desk. Her sharp gaze is fixed on the board before a harrow web of names, dates, and half-connected truths. Tension arcs through her back like a coiled spring, an impending storm her instincts refuse to shake. Beyond the steel confines of her office, the Pentagon churns with exhausted urgency. Officers and analysts crash through the corridors, orders barked and answered in the clipped patterns of military precision. But beneath the sharp edges lies an undeniable sense of dread. They're careening toward a breaking point that feels terrifyingly near. Tanner leans forward and whispers to herself, as though breaking the silence aloud might grant her clarity. No more waiting, no more reacting. The flash drive, decrypted and spilling secrets across every confidential screen available, has given them not just names, but whispers of the broader design at work. Contractors, shell companies, trails of bribes and influencing agents in corners so deep even Tanner hadn't thought to look. The lone figure on her board that fills her with the deepest unease? The mysterious financier behind it all, codenamed Spectre. Whoever this is, the true orchestrator behind the mercenaries and sabotages, remains maddeningly shadowed. Direct leads funnel perilously close but never quite land on the source. The soft knock at her door interrupts her thoughts. "Come in," she orders evenly. Renner enters, face grim enough to hollow out a room. "Ma'am, Cordova's report came in." She's holding the line in court, but it's growing thinner. The defense has filed another petition to dismiss key pieces of evidence, claiming insufficient chain of custody documentation. If they get even part of it thrown out, "They won't," Tanner cuts in immediately, her steel blue eyes now locked onto Renner's. "I'll handle the courtroom in the morning. What I need right now are results. Tell me what progress we've made with the disappearance of Cole and surveillance on this so-called Spectre." Renner hesitates, jaw tightening before delivering his answer. Witness security pings suggest Cole's escort made it out of state before the ambush. A hidden route was used, one leading deep into Appalachia. The methods they've relied on to disappear suggest preparation, months of reconnaissance, maybe a year's worth. He hesitates again before adding, "We've got operatives investigating movements in and out of radio dead zones within that area. No success so far." For Simone Clark, the latest lead in the Spectre web, an associate Tanner's analysts had tied to a shadowy logistics company seemed promising. But once Clark had finally surfaced, someone within the chain had tipped her off. She not only vanished immediately, but maneuvered her underlings into staging a fire within Pentagon-laid links. Too convenient was unnerving. "We move carefully, Renner, but close enough scrutiny catches fire too soon." Guard lines must. Tanner's unbroken pivot back sneaks evolutionary light techniques. Spectre's methods fragment finds realization, centering reflective actions, synchronizing balances essential. Active damaging, no essential interference, disarray. The courtroom buzzed with a tension so thick it seemed to distort the air. General Isabel Tanner entered with an aura of unshakable authority, eyes scanning the room filled with rigid jurors, observers, and the accused officers, whose postures betrayed a quiet confidence that gnawed at her resolve. Captain Eliza Cordova gave her a terse nod from the prosecution's table, signaling that the next sequence of testimony was ready to proceed, though her glance carried unease. As Tanner sat, the weight of what awaited them pressed heavily on her shoulders. The witness stand was empty, but it wouldn't remain so for long. For the past 24 hours, the tide had been teetering, threatening to overwhelm her team on all sides. The flash drive recovered from the whistleblower had unveiled damning information, but the courtroom rules dictated every piece of evidence would be scrutinized for its chain of custody. The absence of witness missing since the ambush presented a gaping hole in their narrative, and it was one the defense was more than eager to exploit. The door at the far end of the room creaked slightly, drawing every set of eyes. The next witness appeared, Corporal Jenna Willis, one of Colonel Marcus Weaver's most trusted subordinates. Her uniform was immaculate, her step confident, but the hint of nervousness in her clenched fists didn't escape Tanner's notice. Willis was young, early 30s, with an intense energy that suggested she'd seen more than her fair share of battles. She saluted the judge before taking her seat at the stand. The defense lawyer, a man of unnerving composure, leaned back in his chair, already preparing to dissect her testimony. Cordova took a steadying breath before pacing toward the witness stand. "Corporal Willis," she began, her voice steady but carrying just a tinge of emotional gravity, "you served directly under Colonel Marcus Weaver in 3 separate deployments. Can you tell the court about his leadership style?" Willis straightened, her gaze unwavering. "Colonel Weaver was fearless," she began, her voice clear and strong. "He never asked us to do anything he wouldn't do himself. More than that, he respected everyone, no matter their rank or background. He had a way of making you feel like you mattered, like you were part of something bigger than yourself. He didn't just lead us, he protected us." Cordova nodded. "And did that sense of protection extend beyond the battlefield? To civilian life, for instance?" For a moment, Willis faltered, her lips tightening imperceptibly. "Yes," she admitted finally. "In every sense. Marcus Colonel Weaver believed that a person's duty to others didn't end when the uniform came off. He carried that belief with him everywhere." The defense lawyer stirred, his smirk barely concealed. He stood smoothly as Cordova signaled that she was finished with her opening line of questioning. "Corporal Willis," he began, his tone oily, "you've painted a glowing portrait of Colonel Weaver, but let's scrutinize the ideals you described. Is it not possible that his sense of duty, as you called it, led to reckless behavior? Perhaps even putting himself or others in unnecessary danger?" Willis flinched, bristling visibly at the implication. "No," she said firmly. "Colonel Weaver made calculated risks, always with the mission and his people in mind. Recklessness wasn't in his nature." The lawyer smiled thinly. "Not in his nature." He let the phrase linger, turning to pace slowly in front of the jury. "And yet, isn't it also true that, on occasion, he clashed with authority figures? Some might say he took his sense of justice a bit too far?" Cordova rose immediately. "Objection, speculation." "Sustained," the judge ruled, his firm tone signaling the defense to proceed carefully. The lawyer adjusted his approach but didn't relent entirely. "You mentioned his belief that duty doesn't end when the uniform comes off. On the day Colonel Weaver encountered the officers in question, do you believe that mindset influenced his actions?" Willis hesitated, the weight of her words growing heavier with every second she took to answer. Tanner's sharp eyes studied her. The corporal's testimony could either cement their argument or give the defense the sliver of doubt they needed. "Colonel Weaver," Willis began slowly, choosing her words with soldier-like precision, "believed in standing up for what was right. If that's what you mean by his mindset influencing his actions, then yes. But standing up for what's right isn't a crime. Abusing the authority to arrest someone who does is." A ripple of murmurs passed through the spectators, quickly silenced by the sharp bang of the judge's gavel. The defense lawyer considered pressing further, but ultimately returned to his seat, his face betraying no reaction. As the testimony ended and Willis was excused, Tanner leaned toward Cordova. "You did well to frame that," she said quietly, "but we need something irrefutable." Cordova's jaw tightened. We won't get that without Cole, and if the judge gives in to the defense's petition to dismiss, we'll barely have a case left. Tanner didn't reply, her mind already spinning scenarios. The next witness would buy them a small reprieve, but only for so long. They were losing traction, and she needed a breakthrough. Meanwhile, outside the fortified walls of the Pentagon, more chaos brewed. The informant Tanner had rescued, wired with a GPS tracker for her own protection, was currently under military interrogation at a secured location. Renner observed from behind protective glass as Simmons conducted the questioning. The informant, now identified as Sarah Delaney, had provided critical intel, but inconsistencies were beginning to crop up, causing simmering doubt among Tanner's inner circle. "You were hired to monitor communications," Simmons was saying, her tone even but sharp. "But who hired you? Who gave you the directive to intercept military data?" Delaney hesitated, her hands fidgeting nervously. "I didn't know their names," she said finally. "It was always anonymous payments, anonymous instructions. All I had were dead drops and an encrypted message board." "And yet," Simmons pressed, "you managed to identify targets within the military, people like General Tanner. That doesn't happen without direct access to classified intelligence. Who gave you that access?" Delaney's expression flickered, resolution briefly breaking into fear. "I've told you everything I know," she said, her voice quieter now. "You think I wanted to do this? They were threatening me, my family. I didn't have a choice." Renner's voice came through the communications link to Simmons. "She's deflecting. Don't let up." But before Simmons could ask her next question, a sharp alarm blared through the observation room. Renner jerked his head toward a nearby monitor where surveillance footage showed dramatic movement just outside the interrogation facility. A van screeching to a halt, a swarm of heavily armed figures pouring out. They moved with precision, clearly targeting Delaney. "We've got hostiles inbound," Simmons snapped into her lapel mic, already motioning for security to lock down the premises. "Repeat, hostile contact outside the secure perimeter, contain and neutralize." Renner, now fully alert, turned toward his comm device to alert Tanner, but even as he dialed her code, he knew the chaos would soon spill directly into the courtroom's fragile proceedings. Back in the courtroom, Tanner's phone buzzed discreetly. A quick glance at Renner's message confirmed what she had already begun to suspect: whoever was behind the ambush at the parking garage wasn't finished. Her presence was needed elsewhere, but leaving the trial at this critical juncture could undermine everything they had worked to achieve. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to remain seated as the defense began their cross-examination of the next witness, a forensic analyst who had reviewed the limited body cam footage salvaged from the day of Weaver's confrontation. The analyst was meticulous, walking through each frame of the footage and describing the glaring inconsistencies between the accused officer's reports and what could be seen on camera. But the defense had clearly prepared for this moment, undermining the analyst by questioning the chain of evidence and pointing out the corrupted sections of the footage. "You can't say with certainty," the defense lawyer argued, "that this footage paints an unbiased or complete picture of that day's events. Is that correct?" The analyst hesitated, and Tanner resisted the urge to grind her teeth in frustration. "With the available data," the witness admitted slowly, "we can only make educated assessments." Cordova stood to object, but Tanner motioned for her to wait. The analyst's credibility wasn't worth risking in a futile back and forth. Their best tools were still to come, assuming they didn't lose everything to sabotage first. As the day's session was adjourned, Tanner rose swiftly, exiting the room before the murmurs of the crowd could erupt into chatter. She had to handle this attack at the interrogation site and fast. Victory in the courtroom was meaningless if the enemy neutralized their key informant before they could unearth Spector's identity. Recap. Corporal Willis delivers a strong but vulnerable testimony supporting Colonel Weaver's moral character, while the defense uses procedural challenges to exploit missing evidence and gaps in credibility. Simultaneously, a new ambush targets Delaney, raising the stakes as Tanner attempts to balance the courtroom battle and the unraveling conspiracy outside its walls. The dim courtroom felt like the eye of a storm, the relative calm that ignored the chaos boiling just outside its thick walls. General Isabel Tanner sat resolutely at the prosecution's table, her expression a mask of composure as Captain Cordova shuffled through documents. Despite the apparent control in the courtroom, Tanner's mind was a war zone. News of the assault at the secure facility where their key informant, Sarah Delaney, was currently held pressed on her composure. Every second spent idling in this trial felt like giving the enemy a chance to pull another card from their deck of sabotage. Yet here she was, unable to move without undermining the case entirely. "All rise!" The voice of the court clerk rang out as the judge entered. The court followed suit, standing as their fatigue melded with anticipation. There was an unspoken understanding that the military tribunal now served as the battlefield, not just for justice for Marcus Weaver, but for the credibility of the military justice system itself. The next witness was called. Tanner silently exhaled, bracing herself. Dr. Russell Miles, a civilian forensics expert, entered the room, a folder of carefully prepared notes tucked under his arm. Unlike military personnel, whose demeanor carried sharp discipline, Miles's movements were looser, more reserved, but his brilliance was non-negotiable. "Dr. Miles," Cordova began, her voice practiced as she approached the stand, "you've reviewed the surviving body camera footage from the incident involving Colonel Marcus Weaver and the defendants. Is that correct?" "Yes," Miles replied, his nasally tone betraying an undertone of conviction. Despite multiple interruptions in the recordings, there were recoverable fragments capable of analysis. Cordova nodded. "And what conclusions were you able to draw?" Miles flipped open his file, adjusting his glasses. "While corruption in critical segments of the footage prevents us from understanding the entire context, the body language, positioning, and visible actions showcased in portions of the video directly challenge the defendant's written reports. For example, Colonel Weaver's actions were consistent with de-escalatory body language, including open palms and non-aggressive postures, contrary to claims by the defendants stating they believed a combative threat was imminent." Tanner carefully scanned the faces of the jurors. Their exterior neutrality could only partially mask thoughts brewing beneath the surface. Miles's words were measured but poignant. "And what about timelines?" Cordova pressed. "How do the altered segments affect overall credibility?" Miles adjusted his position on the stand. "It's clear there were intentional data disruptions. Specific moments deemed critical when physical altercations began, for instance, were either deleted or impaired such that reconstruction is impossible. The timing, coinciding with pivotal actions, strongly suggests interference post-incident." The defense rose almost immediately, their lawyer strolling confidently to the center of the courtroom. "Dr. Miles," he began, his voice one of feigned incredulity, "you've built quite the framework of assumptions, but allow me to ask, can you positively state that the footage, in its incomplete state, represents an unbiased record of events?" Miles glanced toward Cordova before responding. "It's not the raw footage alone that informs conclusions, but also corroborative evidence, testimonies, positioning of the officers in the frames, and physical evidence from the scene that aligns inconsistently with their stated accounts." "So, no," the defense lawyer pressed, "you cannot say definitively that the footage is unbiased." Miles sighed lightly. "By definition, any altered footage is biased in its incompleteness, but—" "Thank you, Dr. Miles," the defense interrupted, pivoting quickly to plant seeds of doubt into the jury's psyche. "No further questions." Even as the witness left the stand, the damage became apparent. Doubt seeped into corners of the prosecution's case like slow poison. Tanner and Cordova exchanged glances, though neither said a word. They couldn't afford to show weakness, but the cracks were forming faster than they'd anticipated. Outside the courtroom, the situation was nothing less than dire. The assault on the secure facility had escalated far quicker than Renner's team could manage. Sarah Delaney had been extracted by the mercenary operatives before reinforcements could secure the perimeter. Simmons, now coordinating the intelligence response, barked sharp commands into her comms, her usual sharp composure fraying at the edges. One of the analysts approached Renner with grim urgency. "Sir, this just came through pipeline decryption," they said, handing him a brief transcript of communications intercepted between the attackers. Renner scanned the document quickly. Key phrases popped out. "Extract completed. Delta coordinates clear. Courier en route. Spectre secure." "Spectre," Renner muttered under his breath. The shadowy figure was no longer simply orchestrating from the edges. They were directly removing obstacles now. "Send this to General Tanner, immediately." The text came through Tanner's secure handheld just after the court's midday recess began. She stepped into an empty corridor outside the courthouse, leaving the court's hum behind her. Cordova followed close behind, her expression reflecting unease. "Spectre's cleaning house," Tanner said as she showed Cordova the transcript. They have Delaney. They're 2 steps ahead and I'm tired of chasing. Cordova frowned. What's the play, General? Tanner considered her options. Time was slipping through her fingers, and now the stakes were even higher. We need to force their hand, she said after a moment. If they think this case is all they're fighting for, they'll stay on the offensive. But if we turn the focus onto them, force Spectre into the light, the dynamic changes. They stop looking for ways to dismantle us and start scrambling to cover their tracks. Cordova tilted her head slightly. And how do we manage that exactly? Tanner's lips curved upward in the faintest trace of a predatory smile. We give them something to fear. The courtroom reconvened with a shifted focus. By Tanner's order, a digital forensic expert was brought in under the pretext of analyzing the communication activities of the officers on trial. Specialists referred directly to intercepted communications revealing covert messages between the defendants, hinting at fabricated reports and possible suppression orders enforced by precinct leadership. The signals transmitted from the precinct's network, the forensic expert explained carefully, directly correlate with post-incident communications containing language not present in initial officer testimonies. This suggests discussions about adjusting narratives post facto to align with claims against Colonel Weaver. The defense objected loudly, their lawyer arguing the dangers of speculation, but Tanner carefully guided Cordova to ensure the evidence slipped through procedural cracks. Though not entirely irrefutable, the shifts in perception were palpable, seeding doubt about the officer's motives among even the most impartial jury members. Tanner let the first ripple widen before preparing to drop far heavier stones. Behind the scenes, her covert operation was unfolding with precision. Renner coordinated with private analysts secure within the Pentagon's inner workings to trace every financial ledger implicated in the whistleblower's decrypted flash drive. Shell companies began untangling like threads, and the proximity of certain transit patterns to Spectre-controlled activities became undeniably apparent. The web of corporate entanglements feeding the conspiracy grew stark before their polished eyes. Pull Spectre's profile forward, Simmons instructed, as data renders flooded classified projectors. Renner nodded grimly. If these leads tie close enough, it accomplishes Tanner's risks to gamble against Spectre, escaping prosecution on fragmentation, unknown fragility induction model, tempo deviation entrapment, estimates hunting, tactical superior attrition, penalties, benefits, bordering decisive separation of arst in place, clarified. Inside abrupt pivotal escalation, Colonel Marcus Weaver's name echoed through the Pentagon halls like a hymn of unfinished justice. Despite the towering barriers and the cloak of corruption threatening to overshadow his legacy, General Isabel Tanner bore the weight of a soldier's last vow. Each step she took was deliberate, hardened by the unforgiving terrain of bureaucracy and betrayal within American institutions. This was no longer about Weaver alone. It was about surgically carving the truth out of the shadows suffocating their system. Her orders had been swift. Overnight, her team traced financial threads leading directly to Spectre's shadowy benefactor, orchestrating the attacks, mercenaries, and public manipulation from the very core of the conspiracy. But the most critical discovery was made at dawn, a secure server buried deep within Appalachian territory tied to the payment trails. The location was hosting an emergency transfer of resources, including digital archives that could unravel the groundwork of Spectre's operation. The servers go offline in 4 hours. Lieutenant Grace Simmons relayed to Tanner, her eyes sharp as she laid out the intercepted satellite intel on the screen before them. Once that happens, operational evidence dissolves. It'll be as though none of it existed to start with. What are the risks? Tanner asked, folding her arms, her face impassive but her tone demanding clarity. Spectre has personnel there, armed, military-grade defenses. They're prepared to neutralize any unauthorized attempt and burn the remaining assets. Major Renner interjected grimly, stepping up beside Simmons. This isn't some detached logistical site, it's a fortress disguised as a data hub. Tanner's jaw tightened. Of every decision laid out before her in the past week, this one cut the deepest. A direct strike risked Spectre's retaliation in the courtroom and across civilian domains. The trial, already tenuous, was a precarious matchstick, and yet, leaving that server untouched would grant Spectre uncontested dominion. She turned to Renner, her voice low but clear. Deploy the Ghost Unit. I'll go myself to command on-site. This operation doesn't breathe an inch of oxygen without my authority. Renner's lips parted to object, but Tanner silenced him with a single sharp look. "The courtroom's secondary, Major. If we fail here, there won't be a system left to defend it." The barren trail leading to the Appalachian server site saw Tanner outfitted in full tactical gear, her uniform, a seamless blend of function and command. Beside her, the Ghost Unit. The Pentagon's elite strike force moved like shadows cutting across the dawn mist. For all their precision and stoicism, the stakes of this mission radiated as palpable tension among even their hardened ranks. It took 30 men to form the assault perimeter. The objective was simple in theory, but labyrinthine in execution. Breach the facility, neutralize resistance, acquire the server drives intact, and extract the data within an hour. The clock raced against them. The terrain offered no mercy. Thickets veiled open grounds draped with strategically hidden cameras and automated turrets. Drones buzzed faintly overhead, weaving between barren trees like mechanical vultures. Tanner communicated over her earpiece to Renner in the Pentagon Ops Center. "We're on site. No defense alarms triggered so far. Proceeding to breach level 1. Maintain perimeter integrity," Renner responded. "You've got one shot at entry. They're banking on their reinforcements buying time." Tanner raised her closed fist, halting the team. With practiced fluidity, 2 Ghost Unit technicians activated suppressors, disabling radar systems and feeding false readings into outgoing signal feeds. A sharp double beep in everyone's comms confirmed success. Entry was greenlit. The first bang shattered the morning haze, an explosive charge obliterating the unassuming barn door concealing the underground bunker's entrance. The team poured in, aiming with calculated lethality. Shots cracked through the silo as automated defenses engaged, red warning lights cascading down narrow corridors. Tanner moved like she'd trained for decades. Each motion deliberate, every assessment razor-sharp. Deeper inside, fortified rooms buzzed with activity as Spectre's tech operatives scrambled to upload core archives into encrypted channels. These weren't mere gunmen, they were educated mercenaries, integrated into Spectre's logistics. "They're wiping sections of the archives faster than anticipated, Commander," Simmons' voice echoed through Tanner's comm, back at the base. "Hurry!" Tanner's laser focus bore into the corridor ahead of her. Reinforcements streamed to the halls, Spectre soldiers fanning out to delay and intercept. Bullets pinged off reinforced shielding as her team advanced steadily, cutting angles at every successive defense point. "We breach their data bay within 3 minutes, Tanner commanded firmly. "Stack!" It wasn't just firing on enemy targets. Tanner orchestrated her team to overlap suppressing movements as tactical units disabled trap nodes interwoven through the hall. Her head resided not only amongst bullet trajectories, but in schematic designs buzzing palpably through every corner of her mind. Another floor down, the sound of resource burners echoed emergency shredders grinding Spectre's physical data at the server hub's helm. Tanner's boots beat the floor urgently as she approached their final breach. "Explosives ready," armed tech operative Lopez stated sharply. "Execute." Tanner's word was swift. Fire rocked outwardly controlled concussive range, and then sprawling shadows opened radiantly. Computer bays glared in light-pierced slashes. Inside now lay pinned key Spectre handlers across. Decisive compromising parameters, deploying extensive captures, rapidly unsteady collapses, fractional derivational red screens, haunting single server bank-wide. Crushingly total trace, impacting designing calculations along finish loops. Multi-part align diving pro-target spect, centerfold basing system, fragilities, unassailable specific trace, amplified compiling tether lines, centroid protocol, secure, fluid crossing hails, exact distance, nightmare curtain, validated distant sudden, trace symlink, first combat, roofing smash breach, closing absurd scale, manual security rectify, intercept now, dependent QG, 11 sims ordered level coordinate plum.